Trent Williams option trigger day is looming. It's tomorrow, which means that maybe we see some action today. Maybe we don't see any action. Maybe it just vests and we continue on with our lives. But a look at the 49ers' current financial picture is rather staggering and illustrates the importance of getting something done. You always want to balance out your salary cap commitments in any given season. And this is what the 49ers 53-man roster looks like. Now, we got dead money is shaded here in the dark gray. So guys like Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, George Odom taking up large percentages of dead money. We already know that. The 49ers moved on from them last year. But guys on the active roster projected to make the 53-man are either in red or in gold. And the cap hit for Trent Williams is extremely outsized at nearly $39 million for this 2026 season. Even Nick Bosa's, which was bigger at $41 million, has been moved down by a simple restructure. Trent Williams, it's a not so simple restructure since it's involving extension talks. Another way to visualize this, look at the 49ers offensive line. Look at the cap hits from left tackle to right tackle. Colton McKivitz signed an extension just before week 1 when the 49ers beat Seattle last year. And his cap hit here is only $5.8 million. Jake Brendel on the final year of a deal at center at 5.4. And then you've just got the massive spaceship looming, the cap hit of Trent Williams at $38.9 million. So I've gone through the mechanics. I will summarize them again just to illustrate the moment here. Nothing to Trent Williams is guaranteed for this 2026 season, but there is a $10 million option bonus. And according to the salary cap websites, it is due by March 20th, and it currently is March 19th. That $10 million option bonus is set up as a proration against the salary cap over 4 years, so it's $2.5 million a year. So if vested, if triggered, then it moves down through the salary cap with an impact of $2.5 million per season, including this one. Trent Williams also is due a base salary of a little bit over $22 million per year. So you add 10 to 22, that's 32 plus about $850,000 or $950,000 of total bonus money. That includes the total per game roster bonus and the workout bonus. So it all comes out to $33 million heading his way, scheduled to head his way this year, plus the prorations of the signing option bonus stuff that had already existed. All adds up to $38.8 million, the number that the 49ers would like to reduce, because they are in a spot where the roster is not quite finished yet. Here is the look at the 90-man roster with the 53-man depth chart. We can see, you already saw the offensive line delineation for the 49ers, but they might be interested in adding another left guard. As of right now, we've got Brett Toth penciled in there at the starting spot, but I'm not 100% sure about that. The 49ers might be interested in adding at safety. They only have 3 safeties on this 53-man projection at the time being right now. They definitely are interested in adding more defensive linemen. The reason I added the injury shading, the pink injury shading yesterday at defensive line, was to illustrate where exactly the 49ers are at that position. Keon White is coming off of getting shot in the ankle. Micah Williams is coming off of an ACL tear. Alfred Collins is coming off of shoulder surgery. Nick Bosa is coming off of an ACL tear. I only firmly project 7 D linemen to make this 53-man roster. Upwards of 11 have made it onto the 53 before. 9 or 10 is a more normal number. 8 is the minimum number needed for a game day rotation. So if I only have 7 names that I'm sure would make it if they were healthy right now, that means that it's even more thin if you consider the fact that 4 of those guys would not be able to suit up if the 49ers played or practiced today. So defensive line, definitely a spot where the 49ers are looking to add. I wrote the big salary cap piece on the San Francisco Standard the other day, and I talked about potential veteran additions for the 49ers. Joel Bitonio would be somebody who, if he doesn't retire, yes, I would think they'd be interested at a certain price for left guard. Brett Toth and Connor Colby, those would obviously be the budget prices for the 49ers at left guard. And the one that we've been talking about every day, Joey Bosa. And I don't know if Joey is going to want more or less, if he's wanting more or less than last year. I think the 49ers were willing to offer around 10, and Joey played for 13 from Buffalo. The truth of the matter is, though, that the 49ers are looking for rotational pieces, I think, for this defensive line, because once they do get Michael and Nick officially back, then I think that they're set at the starting defensive end spots. I think that they're really, really low looking for a speed rusher, probably going to look at the NFL draft for that, and just B, somebody you can upgrade from Sam Okawanu, who signed for $3.5 million this year. But you also, while upgrading, can also factor all of these guys into a plan, because I think you're going to want to come in waves as a pass rush if you are the 49ers. So all of that can be discussed as we go through the entire 49ers 53-man roster this morning. I figured that would be a good alarm update, making the 53 as we relate it to the salary cap, and this ties in to Trent Williams. 49ers, the magic number is going to be $20 million to roll over to 2027. That is, I think, last year it was $20 million that they rolled over from 2025 to 2026. If by the time that this 2026 fiscal year is done for the 49ers, they've got $20 million to roll over, I think that's the minimum that they need, given the escalating costs moving into 2027. The 49ers practice the art of pushing cap hits down the road. In 2027, they already have $342 million in liabilities and only have 37 players on the roster. So the projected 2027 cap right here is $327 million, and the 49ers are already committed to 342. Obviously, cuts can happen. It's not 342 million guaranteed. There is some guaranteed money in there, but the majority of it is non-guaranteed, so they're going to have to reshuffle a lot of things. I'm sure that we're going to see some restructures and some cuts in 2027. I mean, it could be a big-time roster rehaul year again for the 49ers. You just never know with these kind of liabilities already looming there. That is why they are being extremely, extremely cautious with how much money they earmark for Trent Williams guaranteed into 2027. Again, you look at this, you look at $342 million of liabilities already in 2027. None of those liabilities are guaranteed money for Trent Williams. Sure, there'd be some dead money, which the 49ers essentially set up intentionally by pushing the cap down the road. But when you're trying to thread this needle with Trent, you've got to make sure that the amount of guarantees that you extend and push into 2027 is something that is manageable for the salary cap as a whole. A little bit of news this morning. The former 49ers long snapper Taybor Pepper has signed with the Miami Dolphins. So Tabor back in the league, obviously well remembered, I'm sure, for the sideline incident with Deebo Samuel back in 2024 against Tampa Bay after Jake Moody had missed his third field goal of the game. The 49ers decided to clean house. The entire kicking operation was gone by week 2 of the subsequent season, including Moody. But they cut Pepper and they cut Wishnowsky, the punter and the holder, that offseason. And then Jake Moody had one game, and the game didn't go well. He missed 2 kicks against the Seattle Seahawks, and Eddie Pinheiro came in. He has since been extended. 49ers have moved on to a new punter, Corliss Waitman, after a year of Thomas Morstead, the veteran. And obviously the 40-year-old long snapper, John Weeks, has since taken Taybor Pepper's job. Pepper was out of the league for the 2025 season, made it known on social media that he would like to continue long snapping somewhere, and he's going to get an opportunity in Miami. That is a team that very much looks to be reloading this year. Contract details, by the way, in for Nate Hobbs. And it was the one contract the 49ers had given out this year that is, worth more than the league minimum, where the 49ers have not used any void years to stretch out the cap hit. For whatever reason, that didn't happen with this contract. So Nate Hobbs has a fairly large, it's a contract worth up to $3.5 million per year, but the cap hit is $3.38 million for Nate Hobbs, which is not small for the 49ers defensive back. I have him here listed as cornerback 6. I think it's definitely going to be higher up on the pecking order for Nate Hobbs, given the fact that he does have well over $1 million guaranteed. That entire base salary, I think it's $1.86 million, is guaranteed for Nate Hobbs. And he does take up the second biggest hit and has the most guaranteed money, actually, this year of any 49ers cornerback, because Deommodore Lenoir doesn't have an option vest until September 1st. So it is not technically guaranteed. We've got the DB room right here. If you guys want to see the salary cap hits divvied up of the 49ers defensive back position. Deommodore Lenoir, the biggest one, of course, but it's fairly balanced here for the 49ers DBs. And this is a good way to look at the 49ers 53-man roster. Lenoir, and this is a deal, by the way. Consider the fact that Trent McDuffie is making $34 million a year from the Rams. The fact that Lenoir is only at $18 million and the 49ers have him at a cap hit of under 9 this year, with almost identical statistical profile to Trent McDuffie, by the way. That's not bad for the 49ers. They have a bargain there. But then Hobbs comes in, and I know I had him listed as cornerback 6 because I just don't know what his exact role is going to be. He might even moonlight a little bit at safety. You can see the misbalance here. The 49ers, only 3 safeties projected to make the 53-man. So Hobbs, he could be a Swiss Army knife for San Francisco. I don't know if I like the idea of him playing outside cornerback full-time, because that's what Green Bay did last year, and it didn't really work out. They cut him 1 year into a deal worth up to $48 million. So the rest of the cap hits are small. Renardo Green, Upton Stout, and Darrell Luter Jr. all on rookie deals. Saran Neal, who's more of a special teams guy instead of a reserve corner, he has the biggest cap hit, but that is a veteran deal for Saran Neal. So all of a sudden, you've got Hobbs flying in here with a larger number than every other corner except for Deommodore Lenoir. Every other DB except for Lenoir and Jair Brown, who got a proven performance escalator thanks to his early rookie year performance. So Jair, he's still on a rookie deal, but was bumped up to a bigger salary cap hit. However, that is not a guaranteed amount for Jair Brown. So super interesting at the 49ers safety position. We're getting more and more of these contracts every day. We're waiting on Christian Kirk's deal. That's the next really interesting one. I keep a tally of where the 49ers are financially every day. Now this is based on an estimate, and I had Nate Hobbs coming in at a lower price because I thought it was going to include void years. So his cap hit probably $1.5 million bigger or so than I thought it was going to be. So I currently have the 49ers estimated at $26.1 million of salary cap space, with this still holding true, the $20 million target. So they don't have much more room to operate. Now, this is before we are looking at that Trent Williams renegotiation. In an ideal world, you take Trent's number, which is at $38.8 million right here, and you can extend him and you could lower it into the mid-20s. But the trick is finding something that works for 2027 and the 2028 situation as well. Something that obviously works for Trent right now, so you don't have to deal with any hold-in, hold-out drama this year. And if you can find the win-win, then you do find yourself in a good spot with Trent Williams. You know, I wonder, it's funny, this would freak people out. This would really freak people out. Are you guys ready? 49ers have done it twice before to mixed results. But they released Eric Armstead back in 2024. And then they released Kyle Juszczyk back in 2025. In both cases, they asked those players to take pay cuts. They were still under contract. They asked those players to take pay cuts, and they could not reach a resolution with either of those two players. They could not reach agreement on the exact size of those pay cuts. So in both cases, Armstead cut, Juszczyk cut. Armstead went around testing his market value and found a deal with Jacksonville, and he decided to sign with them for much more than the 49ers were offering in their pay cut. Kyle Juszczyk, meanwhile, shopped around. He even visited Pittsburgh. He ended up re-signing with the 49ers. Would the 49ers be bold enough to go let Trent Williams test out his market value? Here you go. Go out on the free market and then have him come back and re-sign with them. Mike and I were talking about it last night, and I think that would be extremely risky for the 49ers because Trent Williams, I don't know if, well, you didn't really have a replacement for Kyle Juszczyk either. And I think that was playing with fire if he were San Francisco. If he signs with Pittsburgh, the offense takes a massive hit. But Trent Williams in the left tackle position, that is a whole new level of importance. With Eric Armstead, yeah, you're dealing with a defensive end, defensive tackle who was past his very prime years. And I think something that is a lot easier to pick the slack up, right, at that position. But at left tackle, I don't know. I don't know if the 49ers would be so bold. They definitely, with the contractual control over Trent Williams this year, have allowed the first wave of free agency to pass. And that option trigger is now coming up on March 20th, $10 million. So we'll see exactly how. We'll see exactly how the 49ers handle it. Sorry about that. Sometimes that happens to me, and it's because I X out of the screen. So I'm back now, and I need to reshare the screen so we can go back to our 53-man depth chart presentation. Here we go. We're going to go through every single position to see where the 49ers stand right now, and you can really get an idea of where each player fits and where each signing fits. We haven't done one of these comprehensive looks yet, so I figured that we would, since the first wave of free agency has passed, since draft talk is now going to start picking up, so we can start discussing exactly where the 49ers can immediately improve and where they immediately might need to improve through the draft. And just because the first wave of free agency is wrapped up doesn't mean that free agency is finished. To give you a little bit of an idea, this is a free agency tracker. These are players who were with the 49ers last year, and you can see where they've signed this year or if they've re-signed. That's in green. The pink signings are with other teams. Sam Okawanu has re-signed with the 49ers. We can even update that in real time right now. He got the $3.5 million tender. So he's a restricted, or was a restricted free agent who's now back with San Francisco. No tenders for Chase Lucas and Teron Jackson. Nothing for Kevin Givens. Still waiting on Ben Barch. He's been making some visits, but has, at least as far as I've seen, has not signed with anybody yet. Brian Robinson, Thomas Morstead, he might retire. We'll see what happens with the former 49ers punter. Eric Kendricks, been following him on social media. Unclear what his future plans are, but the 49ers now like loaded at that linebacker position. Curtis Robinson, Trent Taylor, Cleveland Farrell, all out there still. Garrett Wallow re-signed with the 49ers. Matt Hennessy went to the Cowboys. Pinheiro and Patrick Taylor re-signed with the 49ers. Yetur Gross-Matos and most notably Jawan Jennings still out there as free agents. You know where there are no free agents and where there probably will be no additions for the 49ers over the course of this offseason? And I say probably because you can never say never. But quarterback, look at this. I mean, they've got all four in the building, and we're still over a month ahead of the NFL draft. That is a strong quarterback room. And I really can't wait to see what Curtis Rourke looks like in the 2026 season. He played on a torn ACL at Indiana, the powerhouse Indiana, in 2024. And then he had to have the restorative surgery for the ACL. He had it in an offseason ahead of 2025. 49ers drafted him in the 7th round, same round that they drafted Brock Purdy, but a few years later. And Rourke spent most of or actually all of the season on the NFI, the non-football injury list, since he got hurt in college. And they had 21 days to allow him to practice at the end of the year without activating him to the roster, and they did. And I talked to Curtis in the locker room, and he said that it was just great to get back out there again, and he said that he felt good. And I think that those 3 weeks, that the 21 days, it was probably at most a dozen practices, maybe 10 to 12 practices for Curtis Rourke. Helped get his feet wet at the NFL level. He was in the meeting room all year with Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, and that's good as well. And now you can take that next step in 2026 and go through training camp, practice with the team over the course of the entire season. And then maybe, just maybe, by the time that Mac Jones' contract expires after 2026, Curtis Rourke will be ready to be your QB2 if you're the 49ers. You can also admit another quarterback in 2027 into the QB rehab program. You can also continue developing Adrian Martinez, a prospect who I think the 49ers are intrigued by with his dual threat ability. So they've got a fully stocked quarterback room as we speak right now. And of course, always, as always, shout out to Adrian Martinez for being from Hanford and going to Clovis West High School. That is the 559. Mike is just churning out these elite graphics. We've got more of them that we can turn to go through this position by position. But how about this? Look at this. Beautiful. Good job, Mike. We've got it's the offensive engine. We're looking at the backfield. We're looking at the quarterbacks and the halfbacks and the fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. You've got your A-list pillars and Purdy, McCaffrey, and Juszczyk. The big question, and I was one of the people that raised it heading into free agency, was how the 49ers going to find a way to spell Christian McCaffrey. He had 413 touches last year. That is a career high. I would be wary if I'm the 49ers heading into 2026 about Christian McCaffrey and the workload that he had last year. Is he going to be able to operate full roar at a 400 touch pace again? And if you think that that's a concern, you should probably have an option on this roster that can also deliver the threat that Christian McCaffrey does in the pass game. And I'm not saying the same threat that Christian McCaffrey does, but he needs to be a receiving threat coming out of the backfield. Is Jordan James somebody that the 49ers believe in enough in that regard to pick up the slack for Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield as a running back? Enough rapport with the QB. I know they didn't get Kenneth Gainwell. He signed for a ton of money with the Tampa Bay Bucks. That was somebody that we looked at in free agency as a dependable veteran, but maybe the 49ers really like Jordan James. Also, Johnny Dell runs Johnny Dell's Football Academy on YouTube. Great resource to watch some 49ers tape. He knows his stuff, which is really cool to watch. Johnny Dell today pointed out that he watched a lot of the Christian Kirk tape from last year, and that Christian Kirk was running a lot of the same route concepts that the other Christian, his teammate, now Christian McCaffrey, was running for the 49ers. It was about 75% underneath stuff for Christian Kirk, who's obviously going to play the slot receiver position for the 49ers. The other 25% of the time, Christian Kirk was deployed on speed-oriented deep routes. He was going in the seam. So he's not just a running back coming out of the backfield route-wise. He's obviously a receiver. He was a 1,000-plus yard guy with the Arizona Cardinals and with Jacksonville the following year, straddling 2021 and 2022. But the fact that Christian Kirk can and has been relied on to run the short route tree as much as he did last year, and that's the freshest tape that the 49ers have of him, I think we could logically conclude that he can run some of the Christian McCaffrey route tree. That was Johnny's point this morning, that maybe the 49ers can take some of the receiving load off of Christian McCaffrey with Christian Kirk moving out of that slot. And we know that Kyle Shanahan loves positional adaptability, positionless skill positions. I mean, the 49ers took that to the biggest extreme that it's ever seen over the course of the first half of this decade with Deebo Samuel and then with Christian McCaffrey on the team at the same time. So I do think that Kyle Shanahan can find ways to mitigate workloads and to maintain efficiency and maintain adaptability, pass run adaptability with Christian Kirk in the game, as well as Christian McCaffrey. I mean, and that's the goal. That's what the 49ers are looking at when they're trying to lessen the load on their star running back who had over those 400 touches last season. Semi-related side note, we went over Christian Kirk's senior year stats in high school down in Scottsdale in Arizona, Brock Purdy's territory, that Phoenix Metroplex. But Christian Kirk won 1,000 his senior year of high school. A bunch of other crazy stats as well, but he had over 1,000 rushing yards and over 1,000 receiving yards. I'm not saying the 49ers are going to start handing the ball off 12 times a game to him, but I am saying that he has been a versatile offensive weapon, and maybe the 49ers can multi-position him a little bit. You've got your two primary wideouts in Mike Evans and Ricky Pearsall. Your third wide receiver right now, at least, unless Jacob Cowing or Jordan Watkins can make serious moves, is Christian Kirk. And then you move from there if you're the 49ers, and you could let Kyle Shanahan do his magic. What else does Mike have for us? Everybody needs to give Mike a round of applause. Here we go. We can look at the offensive line. Or we can go to the defensive front. No, we've already looked at the defensive line. I'm really, really curious what the 49ers do at linebacker. Because I want to go linebacker for now. I'm looking at some of this graphical stuff, and I think linebacker is cool. Because we know that they've got the two ringleaders back. They say that getting Dre Greenlaw back for Fred Warner is like getting Thor his hammer. So the 49ers obviously want that leading the way. $6 million fully guaranteed for Dre Greenlaw. But the third linebacker spot is so intriguing to me because I think it also stands a chance to benefit just through the downstream slide of how things are going to work. So everybody knows that Fred Warner is the Mike. So we've got Fred Warner lined up as the middle linebacker. I just got Nick Martin floating around. I know that he's listed as a middle linebacker. He might be more of a weak side guy for the 49ers for all we know. He first, we need to verify that he's out of concussion protocol, and that's something that I can gather for you at the NFL owners meetings toward the end of this month. Dre is your prototypical weak side linebacker, and he's going to be lined up next to Fred Warner. But the ability to move D. Winters to the strong side as your third linebacker is, I think, something that the 49ers in 2024, for example, they only had 34 snaps of this, but they played. Remember the game against the Rams? It was Thursday Night Football, and the 49ers would have won that game, maybe going away had they just caught interceptable passes. Still remember Talanoa Hufanga dropping at least one. I think they dropped 3 would-be Matthew Stafford interceptions in the first half of that game. Despite the dropped interceptions, they just completely smothered the Rams for the majority of that game. The 49ers played tremendously poorly offensively against the Rams that day, but defensively, I mean, they were airtight against LA. And the reason I think that they were so damn good was because D. Winters had elevated to the starting strong side linebacker position. And it's probably part of what pissed Devondre Campbell off and had him leave the field in the second half after Dre Greenlaw couldn't continue. So you started with Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw back in that game, right? That was Dre's return against the Rams. So Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and D. Winters had usurped Devondre Campbell for the third linebacker position. But we only saw that trio for 34 snaps in the first half. Dre could not continue in the second half, and that meant that the 49ers went up to Devondre Campbell and said, hey, can you come into the game? And Devondre Campbell said, no, I'm not coming into the game, and he was escorted off the field. And then he just left the building, and that was all that we saw of Devondre Campbell. But so it's easy to forget in the entire mess of a situation that was Campbell quitting on the team, that the 49ers looked excellent in the first half with Warner, Greenlaw, and D. Winters as their three linebackers against the Rams. They have created a chance to go back to Warner, Greenlaw, and D. Winters at linebacker here in 2026. So 2025 wasn't possible. Dre wanted to go be the Mike in Denver, signed the big deal, made himself some money. Good for Dre. Used the ATM machine out there in the Rocky Mountains, and now is back in the Bay Area at a deal worth up to $6 million. Well, up to $7.5 million, but $6 million fully guaranteed. That to me, you know, when I saw the 49ers re-sign Dre Greenlaw, I knew that they're keeping a very similar defensive DNA under Raheem Morris. I don't know yet what the safety prioritization is going to be on the back end, but I do see that they want some versatility, bringing in Nate Hobbs. With Matt Eberflus back, you know, but 4-3 linebacker focus. Eberflus was with the Cowboys last year, and then he's a Tampa 2 guy. So the 4-3 and all the principles of that with the focus on that second level have been really big for him over the course of his coaching career. So the 49ers, that linebacker position, by the way, is going to get some good tutelage. Johnny Holland is the linebackers coach. Matt Eberflus is the assistant head coach of the defense, somebody who's specialized in linebackers over the course of his career. KJ Wright is still on the 49ers staff. And speaking of 4-3 linebackers, he was a great one for the Legion of Boom. This should be, and given how much the 49ers have stacked this position, they've got, 9 of them, I think, under contract at the position. It should be a lot of fun for the 49ers at that second level. The 49ers will host, they're going to host 2 receivers now. This is a draft report right now. They're going to host Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M, somebody who's projected to go around the late first round, and the 49ers pick at number 27. He's going to come in on one of the 30 visits for the 49ers, and the 49ers are also going to host Omar Cooper Jr. We know that he's going to come in on a 30 visit as well, probably at some point next month. They like to bring in a lot of these guys at the same time if possible, because that allows the 49ers to see how well they all interact with each other. As I said, wide receiver is definitely not out of the question for the 49ers in the first round. There were a lot of people who tried to act like signing Christian Kirk on the tail end of his career to a 1-year deal as wide receiver 3 might somehow change the 49ers' longer-term plans at receiver, and I just didn't understand all those takes. I thought that people were trying a bit too hard with those, and I think based on who the 49ers are bringing in right now for those 30 visits, like we know that it's going to be Concepcion, we know that it's going to be Omar Cooper coming in. I think it's very, very clear that the 49ers remain interested in adding a wide receiver, as they should. I mean, if that's the best player that's out there, that is such an important position. And the 49ers have suffered such tremendous adversity there over the past 2 years, rooted in the Brandon Ayuk defection. They have not been able to separate when they've needed to separate. And it doesn't matter how well you pass protect or how well you do almost anything else if you don't have guys open to throw to downfield. And they need to stock up there to insulate themselves, not just for 2026, but for the future. And if you go there earlier in the draft, you have a higher chance of that player being able to deliver right away. Again, let's zoom in on the wide receiver room for the 49ers. Let's get to these 6 right here in the wide receiver room. This is just about perfect. Maybe a little bit of a zoom out. All right, here you guys go. You've got your X, you've got your Z, you've got your F. Evans, Pearsall, Kirk, I would expect to be the day one starters, or at least the training camp session starters at the very start of that, but maybe stuff changes over training camp. Demarcus Robinson is a good all-around reserve. Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing are the two young guys fighting to make a mark. If they make a mark, great. But I think that the way that this lines up right now, 49ers can easily absorb one more body, especially somebody who can make an impact in 2026. So say that you brought aboard KC Concepcion and you went all in on Texas A&M because Christian Kirk went to Texas A&M and Mike Evans also went to Texas A&M. If you brought him in, I think immediately as a first-round pick, somebody who obviously has got juice in the tank, he could win your wide receiver 3 job. Christian Kirk would then be the veteran plug-in for San Francisco, maybe even at the Z or the F. The F is his natural spot, but the Z, I think, would be possible for Christian Kirk. Your wide receiver room would immediately get better, and it would immediately get more explosive, and you'd also set the table for the next 4 years, not just 2026. Also, all 6 of these guys are not likely to be 100% healthy when you cut down the roster. It's almost impossible to expect all 6 of your wide receivers to be healthy over the course of the entire season. It's just not realistic NFL probability or NFL math. So having a 7th guy that you really want in that room, and that's assuming that you really want Jacob Cowing in that room, but giving him the benefit of the doubt, even if you do, having a 7th guy in that wide receiver room who you can go to war with in 2026, who can raise the explosiveness, raise the separation ability of this offense, would make a whole heck of a lot of sense. The whole idea that just because they signed Christian Kirk doesn't mean they're going to draft a receiver up high is completely nonsensical. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't make sense. It's not connected. And the 49ers, we can now confirm, are going to be hosting at least 2 wide receivers amongst their 30 visits coming up here ahead of the NFL draft. KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M, Omar Cooper, who some have compared to Deebo Samuel. And he is lined up in the backfield for Indiana, and they've handed off to him, and he's been used as a Swiss Army knife type of weapon. But, I mean, everybody, since Deebo had that big year for the 49ers in 2021, everybody has tried to make Deebo comps, and every time they see a weapon like a receiver uses a running back, the first thing that people say is, oh my God, that's Deebo Samuel. I think it's the most overused comp out there. And sometimes I think it's important to just chill and acknowledge that Deebo Samuel's a really, really unique player. I mean, he's 20 plus, maybe 230 pounds, built like an absolute brick. In his prime, he moved at, I forgot what he ran in his 40. I think it was sub 4.5, but it seemed like he moved even faster than that at that weight. So nobody wanted to get in his way because he would just destroy you. I mean, the reason that Deebo delivered a historic season in 2021 is because he's a unique physical skill set, especially in his prime. So just because somebody takes a handoff in college from the wide receiver position doesn't mean that they're Deebo Samuel again. Like prime Deebo, that's just not the case. I actually see, obviously, some of the Deebo yak ability in Omar Cooper, but I see a lot of the Brandon Ayuk springiness in him with the wingspan and the catch radius and obviously the ability to run routes, which, you know, Deebo Samuel, that's a weakness for him, is the separation on some of those man routes. For Omar Cooper, I see more of a natural wide receiver. And I don't, quite frankly, I think it's disrespectful to prime Deebo Samuel to go out and say that, every single guy who takes a handoff in college was like the 2021 version of Deebo. So Omar Cooper, fast, 4.47 40, explosive with the 37-inch vertical, and the size more reminiscent of Brandon Ayuk's at 6 feet, 196 pounds. Really nice 10-yard split, elite explosion coming off of that line of scrimmage. Mike just sent his spider or his relative athletic score, so I was taking a look at that. All right, 40 minutes in, about 900 of you in here. Time to answer some questions here on the Trent Williams potential trigger day. Well, tomorrow would be the trigger day, but we might see some news a little bit later today. Yeah, Cooper definitely is not as thick as Deebo Samuel. Giving the boom in the NFL, like decleating guys, making mouth guards fly. Do you guys remember Deebo 2021, late season December game against the Atlanta Falcons at Levi's? 49ers won that game convincingly. Deebo Samuel just knocked AJ Terrell's mouth guard out and flew like 5 yards. It was a catch inside the 15 or the 10-yard line later in the game. That was prime Deebo season. AJ Terrell, a really good cornerback, by the way. AJ Terrell had a pick six at Levi's in the national championship game for Clemson against Alabama. And then a couple of years later, he was on the same field seeing his mouth guard fly out because Deebo Samuel was steamrolling him. Anyway, to be able to do that the way that Deebo did over those prime years, and I would even say, Deebo's prime was 2021 to 2023. He had 3 prime years there in the middle of his career. 2021 was the statistical explosion. 2022, he still had insane plays. Remember when he ran over Jalen Ramsey early in the year on the catch and run touchdown from Jimmy Garoppolo on the slant that he went up to get? 2023, he had the insane performance against the Philadelphia Eagles where, I mean, that was something else. He had 3 years where people didn't want to tackle him. There was just so much momentum generated by the size and the speed combination that Deebo Samuel put out there to where I don't know if there are guys like that. It's a once in a generation kind of thing, what we saw from Deebo in 2021 and 2022. But it also was much more effective for the 49ers when that was part of, like, when he played the Z. That worked because they could move him around and they could do a bunch of good stuff. When he was the Z that everybody could focus on, when they didn't have a true X, life became a lot harder for Deebo Samuel. And that, then you're relied on to separate a little bit more because more defensive attention can be placed on you and you can't wind up and start barreling through the defense the way that he could earlier in his career. And the loss of Brandon Ayuk in 2024 really hurt Deebo Samuel by extension that season. Obviously, who was gone from the 49ers after 2024. Ayuk stuck around, but Brandon Ayuk never played for the 49ers again. And now they're going to be moving on from Brandon Ayuk, and they've got to figure out the rest of the receiving position as well. Being Butterfly didn't watch football back in 2021. Well, do yourself a favor and watch some prime Deebo highlights on YouTube. You can watch all of his highlights from 2021, and you'll be very, very impressed. It was a fun year. 2021 was a roller coaster ride that maybe was rivaled at times by 2025, but unless you were there in 2021, I don't think the 2025 surpassed it because they made it all the way to the NFC Championship game in 2021. So that game against the Seahawks that the 49ers lost this year, they won that game in 2021. They won on the road against the 1 seed against the Green Bay Packers in the snow at Lambeau Field and won with everybody hurt. Well, not everybody, but Jimmy Garoppolo was playing with 2 injuries to his throwing arm. They overcame an insane amount to win that game. Dante Johnson stepped in and shut down Devontae Adams at corner. To the 2021 season was something really, really special for the 49ers when it came to resilience. Any free agents left at left guard or safety? Joe Bitonio at left guard, but we don't know if he is going to retire or not. Safety's got more names, and I don't want to just go through the list like I did last night because I don't know who John Lynch likes and who he doesn't. We'll get a little bit more intel on that at the owners' meetings, but Tashawn Gibson was somebody who the 49ers didn't sign until right before the season a couple years ago, and that worked out quite well. And that could be the plan for the 49ers when it comes to a veteran safety. All right, I'm going to answer a few questions now. Maybe Mike has some as well as I finish some of my coffee this morning. What do you got, Mike? You have a question for me? He's been sending all these elite graphics. He's telling you to post your questions. We got to get Mike back on the show at some point soon. Who would I take at the 27th pick? Or would I trade back if my guys are gone? Well, if your guys are gone, obviously you should trade back. There's nobody that you like at 27. Don't just force the pick. You know, they only have 6 picks right now. They haven't really been a team to trade back under Lynch and Shanahan. They've traded up. But yeah, if there's nobody there that you like, then you might as well get more darts to throw at the wall. Do a show with Johnny Dells. That'd be fun. You guys should tweet at him. Let him know that we want to do a show together. Take a look at some of the tape. He is really, really good at the tape, and he works really hard. It's fun to watch him and his stuff. Everybody go check out his channel. Let him know that we gave him a nice shout out, and maybe at some point we can do something together. I believe he lives in Alabama. I think he's somewhere in the South, I think, if I read correctly. I think he goes to the Senior Bowl because it's not all that far from him in Mobile. If Trent isn't signed before or after the draft, or if Trent isn't signed before the draft, do you draft an offensive tackle? Listen, you need to draft an offensive tackle who you believe you can develop into a good player down the road. Trent's going to be 38. At some point, you need to find somebody who, unless you have got some kind of trade plan next year, which, you know, they found a way to succeed Joe Staley by trading for Trent Williams. But you can't, the main point is you can't just draft a tackle to say that you drafted a tackle, because that tackle won't necessarily be good and it could be a waste of a draft pick. You have to believe in who you're drafting. There is a chance that last year, the 49ers at pick number 99 or 100, right there at the end of the 3rd round, wanted to draft a tackle. But the Raiders had the 2 picks, not just one. They had the 2 picks in front of them, and they used both of them on tackles. And I think that I think Charles Grant was the name of one of the tackles that went to the Raiders. He was a big developmental guy. I think that the 49ers are okay with how that turned out because they got Upton Stout at pick number 100, and Upton Stout turned into a really good player his first year. But it seems to me that the whole developmental draft a tackle plan might have been scuttled by the Raiders last year when they surprised everybody by drafting 2 tackles in a row at the end of the 3rd round. Do the 49ers do something like that again? Resolve the Trent Williams situation and then try to get somebody in the pipeline that can develop over the course of the year? Sure. But even that's just a lottery ticket at best. So finding a succession plan at tackle when you're a good team is really, really difficult, because you rarely will see somebody talented enough, maybe never will see somebody talented enough, drop to your portion of the draft. If the 49ers are a playoff team year in and year out, and they're not picking until the 20s, it's hard to expect a tackle that does have the physical measurements and the actual talent to succeed at Trent Williams. It's hard to find him at that spot in the draft. Last year, I'll give you something that even strengthens that example. The 49ers picked much higher in 2025 because they only won 6 games in 2024. But one of the tackles whom they would have had to trade even higher up for, Will Campbell, he ended up being a liability in the Super Bowl this past year. Everybody is blaming the Patriots getting blown out on Will Campbell. Now, I think he was playing hurt. But it just goes to show you that starting a young tackle is probably going to come with its share of growing pains. And there's never going to be a magic pill that you can take to just replace Trent Williams. It just isn't that simple. So, yeah, the 49ers could tab somebody as a developmental prospect that could potentially be good down the road, and they can hope to play out the end of Trent Williams' career with this guy being essentially a red shirt behind him. But that is a lot easier said than done. A lot of people will say, just draft the talent. Well, it's like, what talent exactly do you want drafted, and will it actually pan out at the NFL level? Those are very, very different challenges, right? And That's, I think, where the 49ers stand at the tackle position. Yeah, Proctor at 27, if he's there, he's going to be there. Maybe the plan is to find another disgruntled star left tackle. The problem is there's only one Trent Williams. Is Jauan Jennings still a possibility at the right price? Well, I think it would have to be an insanely low price at this point for it to make sense with the 49ers. We'll see how much they've guaranteed Christian Kirk, but they've, it was $6 million was the total value on the contract. And I just think that Jennings would probably have to come in at less than $10 million for the 49ers for that to make sense. Well, I think that the thought that Trent Williams is disgruntled is that he's negotiating for as much money as he possibly can make in this contract. I think that's just a term that people use. I think he's very happy to be in the building with the 49ers, and I think that he's a great teammate and he's a great resource. I love talking to Trent Williams, but obviously at this very moment, at least, as we wait for news, the 49ers and Trent Williams are not seeing eye to eye on the financials. Mike texts me that Jennings doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense for Jauan. Yeah, less than 10 million would not make sense for him. You would think he'd be able to get 12 million somewhere, which is funny because that's what the 49ers offered him last year. But obviously situations have changed. And, if you would just want to get him as an asset to have under contract, if he's willing to sign with you for less than $10 million, I think it's just something you do if you're the 49ers, because he would be a tradable asset at a fair price. His role obviously diminished at this point. They've got an X, they've got a Z. The F receiver position would be super interesting if you mixed Christian Kirk and Jauan Jennings. But again, Kirk would eat significantly into that snap role. You'd have a big slot and a small slot if you're the 49ers. And I think that you would have to pay Jauan in accordance with the smaller role, which would be under 10 million. And I would really like to believe, for Jauan's sake, that there's a team willing to pay him more than $10 million out there. That would be a rough turn for him. So it looks like it's very, very unlikely at this point. So Trent is not, even if he gets the $10 million option bonus, he's not going to be able to keep that if he turns around and retires. There are contractual provisions that prevent stuff like that from happening. You can, like Bryce Huff was due $1 million in a roster bonus or whatever. I think it was officially termed a roster bonus the day before he retired, or the day after he retired. Even if Bryce Huff had not announced his retirement until after that, he wouldn't have gotten to keep the $1 million. Right? You can't just sit around, wait for stuff to trigger, and then retire after. Then guys would be doing that every single year. So you wouldn't have to worry about that. Now, if Trent does not play this next season, the 49ers would have money to sign another tackle, which they could. Obviously, Decker is still out there. Rasheed Walker signed for a crazy low amount with the Panthers. There must be something there that we don't know about behind the scenes. Only $4 million guaranteed. The 49ers would owe a lot of cap money for Trent Williams. $34 million would accelerate to this year, but they would open up $4 or $5 million relative to what had originally been scheduled to Trent cap-wise this year, $39 million. And they would open up, you would look forward into 2027, and you would have open room then because you wouldn't have committed any money to Trent Williams for 2027. I'm sure the 49ers are willing to commit something into 2027 for Trent right now, just not at the level that Trent wants. We'll see if and when they find that compromise. But if Trent is no longer part of the 49ers plans at some point, then whatever money you had budgeted for him in the future could be reallocated to another left tackle. Yes. What's my honest assessment of Trent last season? He was good last year, and I think he was playing dinged up, and that has been the case here. It's been throughout his entire tenure with the 49ers. There have been injuries, and it's football. I think you can expect some injuries. If you put on the tape of Trent Williams and you say, okay, wait, the 49ers aren't running the ball as well, there's a lot of reasons not named Trent Williams why the 49ers were struggling. They got terrible blocking from their receivers and their tight ends last year. Luke Farrell was not what they thought he was going to be. The receivers were not at the level that they had been before. Trent Williams does so many combo blocks with tight ends, and then receivers come in and help too, because he's a very perimeter-oriented player with how athletic he is. He can stretch out to the sideline. So it is so hard and so complicated to analyze blockers and offensive linemen and zone schemes, because the blocking is a team-oriented thing. Like, it's a zone blocking assignment. It's not a man blocking assignment. It is a zone blocking assignment. So you move from zone to zone, and once you move on to another zone, somebody else has to pick up the zone behind you or in front of you. And if the receiver blocking is not as good, if your left guard is not as good, and Trent Williams was playing a lot of last season with Connor Colby struggling next to him at left guard, then the production is not going to be as good to that side. I don't think there was any real, tangible, massive drop-off from Trent himself. I think that they really struggled at left guard after Ben Barch went down. I think they really struggled at receiver. And the stat that I can give you when we talk about all these extra blockers struggling is that when George Kittle was available, the 49ers were a top 10 run game. When George Kittle wasn't available, they were a bottom 10 run game. So if Trent's having to cover two positions, I mean, Being Butterfly says you didn't watch football back in 2021, but you seem to know a lot about football. This is a really good point. Trent was forced to help out at left guard because the left guard was struggling, and I think Trent had to do a little extra straining out to the perimeter if the run blocking there from the receivers wasn't as good. Mike Evans helps a lot. George Kittle's return will help a lot. Another tight end would help a lot. Solidifying left guard would help a lot. Right now they've got Brett Toth as the likely starter in there. Connor Colby can also improve. Remember George Kittle called him out? He said he's got to learn how to take care of his body at an NFL level. Maybe he's learned how to do that ever since George Kittle said that. And maybe Connor Colby will come into camp a transformed player, and he'll take that job. That would be a dream for the 49ers. Then Brett Toth can be a backup, and 49ers can use him at center, left guard, right guard, wherever they need him. I don't know how it's going to develop this offseason, but I would not isolate Trent Williams as the bulk of the 49ers' problems, because if you look at the actual line metrics for San Francisco last year, here, I could leave you guys with this. If you look at the line metrics for the 49ers last season, Trent Williams was the one top performer for sure along that offensive line. So take a look at this. There's Trent coming off the field. Is that? No, that's in Philly after they won in the playoffs. Look at that. Blue is good, red is bad. Do you see Trent at the top? 88th percentile pass blocker, 97th percentile run blocker. No, Trent was not the problem for the 49ers last year. I go back to the run blocking on the perimeter, the tight end run blocking, the loss of Kittle, so much more than Trent Williams. Worried about Farrell being the other blocking tight end? Well, his money is not guaranteed this year. We'll see what the 49ers do in the NFL draft moving forward. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for news. Trent Williams, potential trigger day today, or at least decision day, movement day. We'll see what happens. You can never guarantee anything in the NFL. So hit the little alarm bell notification button, hit the subscribe button. As soon as something does happen, we'll have analysis here. I mean, the 49ers still have nearly 20 spots to fill, so free agent signings could still be coming as well. So hit that alarm bell, hit the subscribe button. We went in depth here. Good graphics from Mike. Hit the sub button for Mike. Round of applause for him. We will talk to you very soon.